is the church? What do you visualize when you hear the word church? Most people picture a building, a beautiful ancient cathedral somewhere in Europe. But according to the Bible, the church is not a building at all. Instead, the church is the gathering of Christians. The Greek word we translate as church in our English Bibles is the word ecclesia. And if you break up this word into its most basic meaning, it refers to the called out ones, to a group of people who are called out of one place in order to be gathered together in another. This word originally meant any gathering of people, not necessarily a gathering of Christians. But early on in the New Testament times, believers began to use this word church to refer to their gatherings specifically. The Bible speaks of church in two ways: the universal church and the local church. The universal church is the spiritual gathering of all God's people who ever have and ever will live. It's the true church as God sees it. Hebrews 12 verse 22 to 23 tells us that the universal church is all those whose names are written in heaven and who will ultimately stand around God's throne at the end of time. The local church is a time-bound and location-bound representation of this universal church. That's why Paul addresses his letters to the church in Ephesus or the church in Corinth and so on. The local church is to be a foretaste of the future gathering, all God's people in glory. Outsiders should be able to look at the local church and get a glimmer of heaven. We, as St. Stephen's Bible Church, are the representation of heaven here in Claremont in 2022. Think about that for a second. We saw earlier that the church is the gathering of Christians, and two things are important to take note of in this definition. First, the church is a gathering, and second, the church is a gathering of Christians specifically. It is only those who have a personal relationship with Jesus Christ who are part of the church. This means that I'm not a Christian because I go to church, but rather because I'm a Christian, I choose to meet with other believers. Jesus warned us that not everyone who gathers at our Sunday meetings is truly part of the church. And if the church is a gathering of Christians, then this means that we can't do church alone. Sadly, more and more Christians are giving up meeting together. They will say, we can do church alone at home, we can watch the sermons in the comfort of our pajamas. But the truth is, you can't do church alone. Unless you have the gathering of Christians, you don't have the church. Church is not a voluntary organization that we choose to belong to, like a soccer club or a book club. No, being part of the church is not optional for a Christian. Instead, when we are brought into a relationship with God through Jesus, we are also brought into a relationship with other believers and form part of the church. See, God's purpose has always been to create a people for himself, not individual believers. So where does your understanding of the church need to change? Do you value meeting together with other believers as much as God does? Let's not try and do church alone. Let's strive and be the local representation of heaven we're called to be.